You can't rule the Mojave without a nice arsenal in your backpack. Melee and unarmed weapons to get up close and personal, guns to take down targets from afar, explosives to wipe out groups of enemies with a boom, and for all the other troublesome foe you'll run into in Fallout New Vegas, the lethal and electric energy weapons. Being my favorite type of guns in the game, energy weapons are stylish, iconic, and most of all, effective. The options for futuristic weaponry in the game are vast. There are many ways to acquire and use an array of different energy weapons and have it be more than viable. For this video, I'm going to take an in-depth look at the numbers and utilizations of energy weapons in New Vegas and try to find the best ones that are scattered around the Mojave and its surrounding areas. Unlike the guns analysis that I did previously, this deep dive won't be done in order of early game, mid game, and late game. The reasoning being that if you really wanted to, you can path to almost any of the premier energy weapons in the game and have both perks and ammunition ready to complement your gun choice. Instead, we're going to look at the highlights for each subcategory of energy weapons: energy pistols, rifles, and heavy weapons. Let's start with energy pistols. The first obvious choice here is the Alien Blaster. Now, I don't have too much experience with the Alien Blaster, but I'm still well aware of its strength. For those uninitiated, you can only obtain the Alien Blaster by taking the Wild Wasteland trait at the very beginning of your playthrough. Changing traits to Wild Wasteland doesn't grant you the ability to grab it at its location at the mercenary camp at the top side of the map. I rarely grab it for two reasons. A, I don't care for Wild Wasteland and prefer taking other traits, but most importantly of all, B, I prefer using the YCS 186 over the Alien Blaster, given that you can only obtain one or the other since the Alien Blaster spawns in place of the YCS. However, if you do start your playthrough with Wild Wasteland, I'm sure you've gone out of your way to grab the Alien Blaster at some point. Its high 75 base damage isn't the most appetizing aspect of this weapon. That lies in its 100% critical chance. You will never not crit with this weapon. With its base damage of 75 and crit damage of 50, that means you'll be doing 125 damage on every shot. 125 on every shot is no fucking joke, especially when paired with perks like better criticals, meaning that every shot is doing a total of 188 on a hit, which is pretty absurd. Unfortunately, the Alien Blaster has some downsides. As previously mentioned, you cannot obtain the YCS 186 if you take Wild Wasteland and get the Alien Blaster, an amazing energy rifle which we're going to be covering later. Spoilers, it's included in this list. That in and of itself is a pretty big hit. However, in addition to that drawback, the Alien Blaster has a finite amount of ammo that can be obtained in the game. Once you eat through its supply, it's gone. The alien captain that possesses the blaster will drop up to roughly 222 alien power cells along with the weapon. After you've used your last alien power cell shot, say goodbye to using the Alien Blaster because you can never use it again. I can totally see an argument to be made about using the Alien Blaster as a stepping stone to advance through the late game, especially if you do more difficult DLCs first in Old Road Blues or Lonesome Road. As an extra note, it has a very sweet zero spread, meaning it possesses pinpoint accuracy, which is pretty cool. Next up, we're going to be looking at Pew Pew, the unique laser pistol obtained from the Sunset Sarsaparilla factory after amassing 50 Sunset Sarsaparilla star bottle caps. Man, that's a mouthful. If you're being extremely vigilant of star bottle caps and drink literally every single Sunset Sarsaparilla you come across, you will probably get Pew Pew by level 20, if not earlier. For reference, I usually have my Pew Pew at around level 15, but depending on how you play and what your pathing is, that number may differ greatly. Regardless of when you obtain it, Pew Pew is a great weapon that I am well accustomed to having in my kit as a mainstay for the early game and mid game of my New Vegas playthrough. Boasting the highest damage out of any energy pistol at 75, the same as the Alien Blaster, and a 2.5 critical multiplier, Pew Pew will put in a lot of work against unassuming targets. I've found that its most powerful use is as a fight opener through sneak attack criticals because of its high base damage and good accuracy. Its critical damage is 50, which is lower than its base damage, a common theme you'll see amongst energy weapons. But because you're triggering that crit so often with its 2.5 crit mult, that additional 50 damage is going to be added quite a number of times throughout the duration of a fight. Despite all the good numbers it presents, Pew Pew unmistakably has some decently sized downsides. For starters, its condition is a little low at 395, which is equivalent to 198 reloads. For a player like me that is quite reckless with their high condition eating ammo type usage, that durability is especially damning for me, given I use max charge ammunition, which deteriorates a weapon's condition a lot faster, meaning I would only get 155 shots or 78 reloads, both of those numbers being pretty low. In addition to its poor durability, it consumes 5 energy cells per shot and has a mag size of 10, meaning you can only shoot twice before you engage in a 3-second reload. Your damage uptime with Pew Pew has the potential of being really poor, especially if you miss your shots, so every single time you pull the trigger, you gotta make it count. If you can overcome its ammo and durability problems, nor mind the repetitive reloading, then you have quite a nice gun in your hand that has the capability of causing massive destruction whenever you land a critical hit. Finally, for our primary list of energy weapons, we're going to be looking at the Forbidden Gun. The compliance regulator, I'm pretty sure, slipped into the game as a developer tool that Obsidian forgot to remove before releasing Fallout New Vegas.
This gun is not balanced, not okay, not honest, not whatever positive attribute you want to give it.
Looking at its numbers, it's pretty shit, right? 8 damage and 12 critical damage? Ugh, icky. Well, its unfairness doesn't come from its damage, it comes from its critical effect. With a 1.5 times crit mult, every time the compliance regulator crits, it does this. Yep, this is not balanced. Every crit is a 10-second paralysis. It's basically a hyper version of beanbag ammo, paralyzing palm or and stay back. 10 full seconds of doing whatever you want to the person that's frozen on the ground like Neville Longbottom from Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. I didn't even want to include it in my list of reasons to do Onstar's last because it's so unfun, it's not even worth mentioning. The fact that this gun exists in New Vegas alone is a problem. If you want to completely break New Vegas, go to Honest Hearts first and grab the compliance regulator. It will trivialize the entire game. Also, for whatever reason, it has 30 fucking ammo in the mag. Why? You get this unique laser pistol in the Fallen Rock Cave, but I avoid ever using it. Sometimes I see it in my unique container in the Lucky 38 and it calls out to me like the Green Goblin mask from Spider-Man, but I just can't use it. It's too stupidly strong to the point where it removes engagement from Fallout New Vegas. There's only one honorable mention I want to include for the energy pistols list, and that is the MF Hyperbreeder Alpha, the unique variant of the Recharger pistol. It has a ton going for it. Most obviously, infinite ammo. It's a unique version of a Recharger pistol, so it benefits from its self-generating ammunition like a normal Recharger pistol would. Additionally, its durability is amazing, being the most durable energy pistol, firing 3,995 shots before it breaks. It's also pretty easy to obtain, being bought from Cliff Briscoe with its base value of 8,900, an extremely solid early to mid-game choice. The only problem I find with it is its damage numbers and damage uptime. Its 25 damage is not very desirable and has a negative crit multiplier actually at 0.24x. And after you eat through the first 10 charged shots in the weapon, you either have to wait for it to gain charge back, leading to damage downtime, or sputter out intermittent shots, which is just bad DPS. It also has a pretty rough 1.0 spread, meaning that it's rather inaccurate. Overall, very solid, but once you get pew pew in your hands, this thing becomes obsolete in my eyes. Let's look at energy rifles next, and let me tell you, this list is gonna be expansive. There's a number of amazing energy rifles, and a good amount worth mentioning, despite not being a choice pick. Jumping into it, since we mentioned it earlier, let's start with the YCS-186, the unique version of the Gauss rifle. Right off the bat, we have to talk about the YCS's base damage. It boasts the highest non-explosive base damage of any weapon in the game at a massive 140, beating the anti-material rifle's damage of 110 by a whole 30 damage. To offset this, the YCS was only given 70 critical damage, but this hardly diminishes the value of the weapon. In addition to its great base damage, the YCS comes with a scope and has a 0.03 spread, meaning it's got killer accuracy. The greatest part about the YCS isn't its damage or range capabilities, but rather how easy it is to obtain. The Mercenaries camp at the north side of the map is not only easy to clear out, but easy to access after you get to New Vegas. You just have to take down a relatively tanky mercenary wearing reinforced combat armor, which you also get when you kill him, and you get access to the highest base damage non-explosive weapon in the game. It does reload after every shot and takes 4 microfusion cells to every shot, but in the early game you can easily solve this problem with one visit to Repcon HQ, which has a total of 580 microfusion cells inside that you find alongside another upcoming gun we're going to discuss. The YCS also has a great crit multiplier of 2, meaning you're going to be getting a good amount of crits with your shots. An amazing choice that should be a staple of your early to mid-game kit every run you don't take Wild Wasteland. In the same vein, we're going to throw the Gauss rifle and 2 great energy rifles, although it is statistically inferior to the YCS in every way, with 20 less base damage, 10 less critical damage, and takes 1 more microfusion cell per shot. Ironically, if you don't have Wild Wasteland, it is 1,000 times easier to get the YCS than a normal Gauss rifle. There is one that can be potentially found at Brewer's Beer Bootlegging near the Sunset Sarsaparilla headquarters if it spawns in the gun closet there. Otherwise, Gloria Van Graff at the Silver Rush sells them at higher levels, or Night Taurus and Hidden Valley can sell Gauss rifles. Let's keep the ball rolling with high base damage weapons, looking at Dead Money's staple weapon, the Hollow Rifle. I'm going to come out and admit that I don't use the hollow rifle very often. Its drawbacks, specifically for me, I can't get over due to personal preference, and you may experience the same feeling. But there's one thing that's for certain with the hollow rifle, and that's that it puts in work. By default, the hollow rifle has 80 damage, both normally and in crit damage, with a 1x crit multiplier, and applies an additional damage over time effect that deals 15 damage over 3 seconds. However, we're not interested in talking about a vanilla hollow rifle. We're going to be talking about a modded one. If you find all the hollow rifle upgrades in Dead Money, you can add an extra 25 damage to your hollow rifle with the focus optics, decrease its spread from 0.4 to 0.15 with the advanced calibration, and increase its maximum condition by a small amount, usually 10 or so shots. With all the proper upgrades, it's worth noting that a fully upgraded hollow rifle does more damage than an anti-material rifle, but doesn't quite beat out the YCS in single shot damage. However, it does excel in overall DPS over the YCS. The hollow rifle has a fire rate of 1.1 with 4 shots in the magazine, and although it is quicker than the YCS, this is where you still run into the hollow rifle's biggest problem: its damage uptime. Because it's pump action and reloads individual shots like a shotgun, you're gonna have a lot of time spent cycling shots or putting cells back into the magazine. Although this time is made up for in its raw damage, it's still a bummer to sit through. Another downside to the weapon is its durability management. Ironically, for a gun that I never use because I just don't like the feel of it, this is where the hollow rifle and I would get along the best. I almost always just collect parts to make weapon repair kits instead of taking the jury rigging perk, and this playstyle is incredibly beneficial for the hollow rifle, given that there is nothing that can repair with it. Even with jury rigging, there is not a single weapon in the entire game that repairs with the hollow rifle, so you're either going to have to take it to a repair person or use weapon repair kits on it. Additionally, you may have noticed that the hollow rifle isn't actually a hit scan. It has a quick moving projectile, meaning that you have to account for that by leading on shots against an enemy. For me, the gun being projectile and not arriving at its target instantly, the pump action nature to it, the individual reload, and the lack of visual clarity with something along the lines of a tracer or really just anything that can be seen coming out of the gun is too much of a drawback to me. But for those of you that can overcome these aspects of the gun, you will be able to utilize a great energy rifle with a lot of potential. Also, obtaining the gun literally could not be any easier. Start Dead Money and you have it. As simple as it comes. Alright, I can't wait any longer. I have to get in my favorite gun in the game. I love Christine's COS sniper rifle without a shadow of a doubt, but my true love lies with the tri-beam laser rifle. Fully upgraded, this thing is a fucking beast, dude. Sorry, I just get too excited talking about this gun. By default, this weapon deals 66 damage, firing 3 beams for 22 damage each. Has a 2.7 fire rate and bears a 1.5 times crit mult for each beam, rewarding them with 22 damage if they crit. With upgrades, the gun gets much better, giving each beam an additional 3 damage with the focus optics for a total of 9 damage, increasing its condition by 200% with the heavy duty capacitor, and raising ammunition capacity to 48 from 24 with the high capacity terminal, giving the tri-beam 16 shots to reload instead of 8. Like shotguns and other multi-beam or pellet firing weapons, the tri-beam laser rifle has a chance to crit on every beam. Likewise, a sneak attack critical will crit for every single laser beam. Statistically, the weapon isn't very flashy overall, but the real beauty in the tri-beam lies in its great stat line across the board, culminating to a gun that's greater than the sum of its parts. 75 base damage, shooting very quickly at 2.7 shots a second, with a 1.5 times crit multiplier is very, very respectable. But the gun gets even crazier with the right perks. Including perks like Laser Commander raises its total damage by 10 and gives each beam an extra flat 10 crit chance, and Set Lasers for Fun gives the gun another extra 4 crit chance. Under the right conditions with powerful ammo, like max charge MFCs that I tend to use, and the proper perks, I truly think that the Tri-Beam Laser Rifle is a top 5 or 10 gun in the game. Give it a shot and let me know how you guys feel. If I can convert anybody out there to follow the Lord and Savior, the Tri-Beam Laser Rifle, then I would be ecstatic to know that I turned people onto a sick gun. You can't receive a GRA Tri-Beam Laser Rifle anywhere else but off vendors. I'd recommend checking out the Silver Rush or Gunrunners to see if there's one there. I believe the Vendatron at Gunrunner sells one consistently. As a note, you can only upgrade a Tri-Beam Laser Rifle if it's a Gunrunner's Arsenal Edition. If it's a normal base game edition, you can't apply mods to it, so it won't be as strong, but still good. Let's talk about more laser guns, the Lair and Elijah's Advanced Lair. Statistically, the Lair and Elijah's Lair are quite comparable. They both have 65 base damage and a 1.5 times crit multiplier. The main differences being that Elijah shoots 0.25 faster, but has less ammo in the mag than the normal Lair at 15 versus 20, and less durability at 245 versus 370. The guns are even similar in the fact that they can both be upgraded with the same mods, but it also showcases their biggest difference in the Lair mod Prismatic Lens that increases damage by 30%. The Prismatic Lens makes the normal Lair split the beam into 3 while increasing the damage, while Elijah's maintains its single beam, meaning that Elijah's is stronger against high DT targets. This is due to the fact that DT is applied to every single instance of damage. Using weapons that shoots multiple pellets or beams makes it so that damage is reduced on every single pellet or beam. Both of these weapons pack a punch, and I tend to use Elijah's to pump that damage out quicker, but the gun is so fucking fragile because I use max charge ammunition. Elijah's lair, by default, using max charge ammunition, breaks fully in a mere 7 reloads or 95 shots. Standard ammunition is not much better, mind you, at 17 reloads, so yippee, another 10 reloads. This problem exists for the normal lair, basically much the same. The standard lair breaks in 8 reloads with max charge ammunition, so it's the same issue. Both versions are easy to get and are obtained from old world blues. A normal lair can be obtained from the top of the X13 research facility by jumping down from the cliff to the north of it. There are 2 Elijah's lairs in Big Mountain. One can be obtained from the roof of the Signal Hills transmitter next to its prismatic lens upgrade, and one can be found on the porch of the watchtower next to the Little Yangtze camp. This is the spot I mistakenly pointed out to be the location where you get Christine's sniper when I was replacing the sniper for recording. My bad. Christine's sniper is actually in the destroyed building across from the watchtower. Let's keep it rolling by finishing off with the good plasma rifles. As a note before we dive into the plasma rifles, I want to say that I think that plasma weapons are worse than laser weapons by a reasonable degree. My reasoning boils down to 2 main factors. Number 1, the projectile on plasma is rough. In general, projectile weapons are much harder to land shots on, and the average plasma projectile is not very fast at all, meaning it's very easy to miss shots from a distance or to miss shots on quickly/erratically moving targets. Number 2, you have no access to Laser Commander, which is an amazing perk, given that the 10% crit chance given by Laser Commander is flat, as opposed to increasing your crit chance by 10%. Both of these drawbacks are rough, and typically prevent me from using plasma weapons basically at all in my playthroughs. Anyhow, let's jump into our first plasma weapon, the unique plasma rifle, the Q35 Matter Modulator. This unique plasma rifle, obtained in the Repcon headquarters, has 40 base damage with a 2x crit multiplier and deals 62 damage on crit. It shoots decently quickly at 2.4 shots a second and has 12 shots in the magazine. Its stat line isn't that great, but what is great about it is its obtainability. It's located in the Repcon headquarters, and all you need to get access to it is 50 lockpick or 50 science. In my playthroughs, I typically have access to the Matter Modulator by level 4 or 5, because I dump all my early points into lockpick, and I usually path through Black Mountain to New Vegas, meaning that I discover the Repcon headquarters along the way. The Matter Modulator can be a staple early game gun. As mentioned before, the Repcon headquarters comes with a cool 580 microfusion cells just lying around. You'll have plenty of ammunition to use this weapon throughout your starting levels. I've tried it in later levels, but it's just not strong enough. It doesn't beat out any other great energy weapons, but it's so good and so accessible early that I have to put it on the list. I'm gonna get a little experimental here before I move into honorable mentions. I'm gonna throw the Multiplast rifle on this list. The Multiplast rifle on paper is great. The problem is it suffers from the plasma drawbacks that I mentioned previously. So in my eyes, that's what keeps it from being definitively premier. The Multiplast rifle has 105 base damage, the 3rd highest of all energy rifles behind the Gauss rifle and the YCS. It shoots 3 plasma projectiles dealing 35 damage each, has a fire rate of 1, shoots 10 times before a reload consuming 3 MFC each trigger pool, a crit multiplier of 1, and deals 34 damage on a crit, which is 1 lower than each projectile. Super weird, I don't know, but on paper, it's pretty solid. 105 damage is just undeniable. That's the way it is, even spread across 3 projectiles. The other stats on the Multiplast rifle are honestly kind of bad. 1 times crit mult, 1 rate of fire, 10 shots to a reload. It's rough, but 105 damage is just solid, no 2 ways about it. The problem is that usually you're gonna have the Matter Modulator and are just gonna use that in place of the Multiplast rifle. But for whatever reason, if your first energy weapon is a Multiplast rifle, it'll probably beat out many other non-unique energy weapons, or even just weapons period, like other bullet-firing guns. You can get a Multiplast rifle ridiculously easy from Gloria Van Graff at the Silver Rush. There's one just lying right in front of her. You can literally walk up, pick it up, take it into the bathroom, and steal it, and nobody will bat an eye. Good realism, Fallout New Vegas. For rifle honorable mentions, the only one I'm going to include is the AER-14 prototype, a very solid unique laser rifle obtained from Vault 22. The reason it doesn't make the list is because it loses out to many other weapons that serve the same purpose or are much easier to be obtained. It has 35 base damage, 3 fire rate with a 2 times crit mult. It loses out to an upgraded tri-beam, which does over double the AER-14 base damage of 35. If you're looking for a good laser rifle option, just use a tri-beam. Time to end strong, literally, with energy heavy weapons, and I'm gonna start off by throwing a curveball at you. I'm gonna list a fully upgraded Gatling laser instead of the Spurtlewood 9700. Let me explain my reasoning. If you compare a fully upgraded Gatling laser to its unique variant, the Spurtlewood 9700, I think that the Gatling laser beats it out by a decent margin. It does less damage and crit damage than the Spurtlewood and has half of its crit multiplier at 0.02 versus the Spurtlewood's 0.04, but those are its only downsides. A fully upgraded Gatling laser shoots faster at 30 ROF versus the Spurtlewood's 20, which is a 50% increase, meaning it has a higher DPS than its unique variant at 390, while the Spurtlewood has a DPS of 320. Additionally, the upgraded Gatling laser has a much higher magazine capacity at 240 versus the Spurtlewood's 90, meaning your damage uptime is higher and you're pumping that damage out quicker. It also has a higher durability than the Spurtlewood, meaning you can use more high condition consuming ammo like max charge electron charge packs. The Gatling laser is only objectively inferior in raw per shot damage. I like both, don't get me wrong, but when you compare the numbers, I think the Gatling laser is stronger. Maybe I'm wrong though, I don't know. You can find a Gatling laser in the Brotherhood of Steel safe house, or you can buy one off Taurus and Hidden Valley. Since I threw one curveball, I'm just gonna go ahead and throw another. I think that a fully upgraded normal plasma caster is better than its unique variant, the Smitty Special. The reasoning largely boils down to critical chance. The Smitty Special fires much faster at 7 shots per second versus the plasma caster's 3.75, but has a much lower critical chance at 0.1. Also, the Smitty Special has a much lower damage per shot at 35 versus the plasma caster's 65. When you fully upgrade the Plasma Caster with its mod High Speed Electrode, its DPS is literally only 1 point lower than the Smitty Special at 244 versus 245, which is just hilarious. Now, I gotta say that the Smitty Special, I hate these names, has twice the mag capacity of the Plasma Caster at 20 versus 10. But I don't really know if that means that the damage uptime is actually higher, because you're getting through the mag almost twice as fast, so I'm not sure. I think that criticals being in play with the Plasma Caster makes it much more alluring to me, since I believe critical hits are absolutely king in Fallout New Vegas. Again, I'm not super convinced on this point, but if you told me to make a decision, I would pick the Plasma Caster. However, my previous distaste for plasma weapons still remains. I just don't like plasma projectiles at all. I would choose a Gatling laser every day of the week. As to where to acquire a Plasma Caster, there's only one guaranteed spawn in New Vegas, and that's in the Silver Rush. You can get it for free if you opt to steal it. I'm gonna finish the heavy weapons section by just listing all the Tesla cannons. I think they're all good. The vanilla Tesla cannon, Elijah's jury-rigged Tesla cannon, and the Tesla beaten prototype all have their uses, and it really just depends on what you're looking for or prefer to choose which one you want. I'm gonna list the major differences so you can decide which synergizes with your playstyle better. Starting with damage, their per shot damage are all very similar. The vanilla Tesla cannon does 80 on hit, Elijah's does 85, and the prototype does 90. Additionally, they all possess a damage over time effect. The vanilla cannon and Elijah's both do 20 damage over 2 seconds, while the prototype does 25 over 2 seconds. They all have the same critical chance at 2x and bear similar crit damage. The prototype and Elijah's both have 45, while the vanilla has 40. Of note, the most accurate of these weapons is Elijah's, which is literally pinpoint accurate because it has 0 spread. So if you like hip firing a lot, you might want to lean more towards Elijah's. One of their biggest differences is in ammo consumption and shots per mag. The vanilla can shoot 4 times per mag, consuming 5 ECP per shot. Elijah's can shoot 6 times per mag, consuming 5 ECP per shot. And the prototype shoots 4 times per mag, consuming 6 ECP per shot. The other big difference is in their durability. The vanilla cannon can shoot 395 times before breaking, Elijah's can shoot 245 times before breaking, and the prototype can shoot 195 times. Depending on if you prefer raw damage, accuracy, or durability, your choice and what Tesla cannon to choose may change, but they're all great weapons that are totally viable. If you prefer raw damage, the prototype is your best choice. If you prefer durability, you can use the vanilla Tesla cannon, or if you prefer meeting in the middle of both, you can use Elijah's, which comes with the benefit of having dead-on accuracy. You can find a vanilla Tesla cannon in the Brotherhood of Steel safe house after you gain access to it, but you can also buy them from Night Taurus and Hidden Valley, the Great Khan Armorer randomly, and can be bought from the Silver Rush after level 16. The Tesla beaten prototype is at the Crashed Vertibird near the south of the map, but is guarded by some pretty difficult enemies in hardened Mr. Gutsies and hardened sentry bots, so be ready if you want to track this thing down. Finally, Elijah's Tesla cannon can be grabbed from Elijah's Watch in the Old World Blues DLC. For honorable mentions of energy heavy weapons, I'm going to include the previously talked about Smitty Special and the Spurtlewood 9700 because I think they're still great weapons. For the final honorable mention, I'm going to go ahead and include the unique flamer, the Cleansing Flame. I think the Cleansing Flame is a very good weapon, but the problem is I prefer my damage up front and immediate. and you lose the ability to get your damage in like that with a flamer. I'm also a huge sneak attack critical guy, and you basically can't benefit from that at all with any sort of dot weapon. I tend to steer clear of dot in general in New Vegas because I think instant kill power trumps all. Still, even though the main aspect of the flamer is damage over time, it's not like super prolonged damage. You can get damage in quickly with the cleansing flame. It deals 15 damage on every damage tick and applies a 10 fire damage dot effect for 6 seconds. A point to note with the Cleansing Flame and the other flamers in general is that the Pyromaniac perk that grants additional damage to fire-based weapons doesn't do so to the damage over time effect, just the on-hit effect, meaning that the 60 fire damage isn't modified at all. You may see this as a boon or a curse depending on how you look at it. Taking Pyromaniac, you get in more damage up front, which may solve your issues, but if you think highly of the damage over time effect that is applied to enemies, you may view this additional damage as pointless. Alright, we've gone over all of the energy weapons. Now let's cut to the chase and go over what I believe to be the best energy pistols, rifles, and heavy weapons. For the first pistol, I'm gonna have to go with Pew Pew. While the guaranteed crits from the Alien Blaster are pretty nasty, it requires you to take the Wild Wasteland trait and has a finite pool of ammunition, which I'm just not a fan of. Pew Pew has the same damage as the Alien Blaster, so as long as you're landing criticals, you're doing the exact same damage as you would with the Alien Blaster. Its great accuracy, potential to be grabbed very early, and killing power are all what make Pew Pew a standout weapon. The last energy pistol I'm literally legally obligated to put on this list is the Compliance Regulator. Trust me, I don't want to. If there's ever such a thing as a dishonest gun, this is it. But I have to put it here because if we're talking about throwing any enjoyment out of the window, then the Compliance Regulator would be the gun to use every single run. I have no desire to give this fucking Cheeselord gun any recognition, but I have to. My hands are tied. The 10-second paralysis effect and the ability to trigger it so often is just so dumb that it completely breaks the game. If you use the Compliance Regulator, congratulations, you have destroyed the integrity of Fallout New Vegas. Moving on, energy rifles are hard, and I think it depends on what you look at. Do you prefer single shot damage or sustained damage is the question you have to ask yourself. Me personally, screw it, I prefer both types of guns. For single shot damage, the YCS is an amazing weapon that can be obtained ridiculously early and has absolutely carried me through the early game more times than I can even count. Head up north, wipe out the mercenaries, and you have a fucking monster weapon in your hands. For sustained damage, I'm gonna be really mad at myself for making this decision, but I have to talk with my head and not with my heart, and I gotta go with Elijah's Advanced Lair. It pains me greatly to not put the Tri-Beam on this list because it's my favorite weapon and is so good, but the numbers just don't fully agree with me. For DPS of energy rifles, Elijah's Advanced Lair reigns supreme with the highest DPS of 232, beating out the Tri-Beam's DPS of 205. Alternatively, if you're facing off against enemies that have little to no DT and/or are using a crit build, the normal lair may actually yield better results for you than Elijah's, given that the critical damage applies to every single laser. That means if you're landing critical hits consistently, despite having a lower DPS than Elijah's lair, the normal lair is pumping out more damage for you on account of Elijah's lair only having a single beam when it's upgraded. Something to keep in mind when you're making your energy weapon pick. However, I will throw in the Tri-Beam as an honorable mention, because if you really prefer having durable weapons, a fully upgraded Tri-Beam laser rifle will give you a durability of 495 shots, an amount just over double that of Elijah's at 245, and slightly higher than the normal lair, which has 370. I personally think they're completely interchangeable, but in terms of raw damage output, both layers objectively have the Tri-Beam beat out if you're not including crits. As much as it pains me to utter those words. For energy heavy weapons, we have a number of choices, but I'm gonna have to start out with another Elijah's weapon, Elijah's jury-rigged Tesla cannon. The middle ground between the vanilla Tesla cannon and the prototype, Elijah's has more ammunition in the mag, shoots slightly faster, and has dead-on accuracy, which I love because I enjoy running around like a madman hip-firing at things. Honestly though, I'm just gonna go ahead and include every Tesla cannon because I don't really think any single one is objectively better than the other. The vanilla Tesla cannon is probably the weakest, but still is the most durable, which can mean a lot in the right scenarios. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say every single Tesla cannon variant. I'm also gonna have to go with a fully upgraded Gatling laser. In terms of just raw damage output, the Gatling laser fully upgraded has some of the highest DPS in all of the game. Maybe it's even the highest? Somebody might want to fact check me on that. Anyhow, the numbers that this gun can pump out are insane, and become even more insane when paired with Laser Commander, and ED's Lonesome Road Followers perk Camaraderie, which gives every single laser an additional flat 5 damage on hit, which can be absolutely absurd. Tons of potential in this weapon. But that rounds out my energy weapons list. For pistols, Pew Pew and the Compliance Regulator. For rifles, the YCS 186 in both Elijah's Lair and the normal version. And finally for heavy weapons, the Gatling laser in all the Tesla cannon versions. The vanilla Tesla cannon, Elijah's jury-rigged Tesla cannon, and the Tesla beaten prototype. think these are the best energy weapons, and honestly, some of the best weapons in the game as a whole. Let me get your guys' thoughts on this and if you agree. Now that this list is done, I'm gonna go kill some death claws with my tri-beam to feel better about myself. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing so I can feel justified about dedicating so much of my time to looking at the Fallout fandom wiki. Also, feel free to stop by my Twitch stream at twitch.tv/Claire_Loon_, where I'm currently in the midst of a new Tale of Two Wastelands playthrough and am clawing my way through the absolutely brutal Fallout 3 early game. I also just want to say thank you to everyone for watching my videos. I was just making them for fun, and it's been really nice to see people enjoy them, give feedback, and debate different stats and playstyles. It's an absolute blast to see. But that's gonna do it for me. Thanks for sticking around. See you next time.